So with that, I'm going to have Dr. Sherwin come back up. There you are. And we'll get our second session going.
Okay, thank you very much, Reverend Richard. And it's good to be here. And so this section in regard to human evolution, I think, is very, very important. By the way, I like to say that the statement, the words human evolution, is an oxymoron, right? Because man has not evolved. Man has been created in the image of God thousands of years ago. And we have been created to have fellowship with God through the person of Jesus Christ. And so human evolution, I always kind of bristle at that phrase. It's kind of like saying jumbo shrimp. Is that a oxymoron? Okay. Or Microsoft Works. Let's take a look. Man was created, as we read about in Genesis chapter 2, and the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. So we would say that man was created uniquely and does not have an animal ancestry. This is what is being taught to the next generation of American public school students using your and my tax dollars. And as we say in Texas, I'm again it, okay? That's what we say in Texas. But anyway, though animals also possess the breath, that's a Hebrew word neshama, and the soul, a Hebrew word nephesh, man's breath, the same word as spirit, and soul were imparted to him by God directly rather than indirectly as imparted to the animals. So evolutionism says that millions of years of death and bloodshed, disease and pain has resulted in man's existence. This is what evolution teaches. And it's tragic because not only is it unbiblical, but it's not scientific either. And we'll see that in just a minute. However, the creation model says man's actions, specifically Genesis chapter 3 and verse 1, has resulted in sin, and that sin leading to physical death. The Apostle Paul talks about that in the book of Romans. So, is human evolution a fact? Okay, that's what we keep hearing. Evolution is a fact, and specifically human evolution is a fact. Human evolution is taught as a fact in American taxpayer-paid public schools, but evolutionists, and this is a key if you're taking notes, please write this down. They don't know how, or when, or what, or where, but they do say human evolution is a fact. They just kind of have to fill in the blanks, as it were. Well, they are mighty large blanks to fill up. For example, this is back in 2017, a little bit dated, but not too much at all. Over the past 15 years, almost every part of our story, that is a human evolution story, every assumption about who our ancestors were and where we came from has been called into question. Now, that quote is from New Scientist magazine. New Scientist magazine is overtly evolutionary and atheistic in their philosophy. I have written to New Scientist, and they have never answered me. And so they are absolutely 100% evolution, and so it's refreshing to see a quote like this in New Scientist. So what do we really know about human evolution? That's the big question. What do we really know about it? New Scientist magazine, again, this is now more recently, just 2 short years ago, said we need to fully explore what? The planet. They need to fully explore the planet to understand our species' origins. Wow, well, how long is that going to take? Let's just explore. This is what they're saying just 2 years ago. Let's explore the planet and then we'll really know. Well, obviously, that's a cop-out because we'll never know. Hawkins said in MSN.com, new human fossil discovery has everyone questioning the origin of mankind. That was said way back last year. Last year, 2022, has everyone questioning the origin of mankind. What was the name of Darwin's infamous book? Origin of Species. What's one thing he never said about it? The Origin of the Species. Okay, Darwin's book was published in 1859. I was a little bit off there, but Darwin's book was published in 1859. As I mentioned earlier, turned the Western world upside down. He just never got around to discussing the title of his book, The Origin of the Species. He talked a lot about, for example, the pigeons you see around city statues and barns. We called wild rock pigeons, and he talked about variation of these wild rock pigeons. Is that evolution? Just minor variation. Okay, that's not evolution. They're still 100% birds, and more specifically, they're 100% pigeons. Okay, and so this comes from the University of Michigan, way back in the year 2023, quote, "Now that we've shown that such environments were present at least 10 million years before bipedalism evolved," that is, walking on two legs. Bipedalism evolved, then look at the other shoe dropped. We need to really rethink human origins too. So as of the year 2023 in April, University of Michigan said we need to really rethink human origins too. So here we are in 2023, and they have to once again rethink it. How and when modern humans first emerged as a species is a major unanswered question in paleoanthropology because the fossil record is incomplete. Okay. We don't maintain the fossil record as incomplete. We as creationists, non-evolutionists, we look at the fossil record as a record of God's judgment on this planet approximately 4,500 years ago. The Genesis flood lasted about how long? Anybody know? It's just us here this morning. Little over a year. And so a little over a year, the fossil record was laid down. Trillions of fossils were laid down during that time. And we find that the fossil record shows the animals that were buried in the Genesis flood were complete and fully formed. And even the late evolutionary atheist Steve Gould, out of that little Bible college back east called Harvard, he admitted that the fossil record does not document evolution, and that's why he and Niles Eldridge out of the American Museum of Natural History put together what they call punctuated equilibria back in the mid-70s. And so punctuated equilibria, or punk-eq, is coming on the forefront of evolutionary naturalism, but most evolutionists are still just your gradualist. But certainly the fossil record does not document human evolution at all. The proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2014 said the timing and nature of early modern human dispersal out of Africa, we've heard that phrase a lot, has long been disputed among scholars, with competing theories or models about how and when it all occurred. Remember, our tax dollars are being used to teach the next generation that we evolved from lower forms of life. As American taxpayers, official American taxpayers, I would like to take quotes like you see here and put them in the section on human evolution in American public school biology textbooks that are paid for by us. There's plenty of room in the section on human evolution to have quotes like this. Is there any Bible in these quotes? No. Any reference to the supernatural, God? No. This is all by evolutionists. And it would be a good idea to have that in American taxpayer-paid public school textbooks so the students can see that there are two sides to the story. Evolutionists would never agree to that. By the way, you must, if you're a public school teacher, you must teach evolution, and you must teach it as a fact, and you cannot give problems or list problems with evolution. Well, if you can't even list problems with evolution, let alone mentioning creation, and if you must teach evolution as a fact, you know what we call that? Indoctrination. That's not education, that's indoctrination. And as we say in Texas, I'm against it. So There's plenty of room in high school textbooks to list what is not known regarding human evolution and even the problems with this idea. This is a cover of a book by Ken Miller and Joe Levine. Joe Levine is my age, and Miller and Levine have a corner on American taxpayer-paid public school biology textbooks. They make a lot of money every year out of royalties, a lot of money. And they will not mention any problems with evolution, only that evolution's a fact. This comes from Allaby's Dictionary of Biology just 3 years ago. Allaby hates creationists. He is absolutely dead set against creation science. And he says, quote, "The time at which the hominid line, that is our alleged ancestors, diverged from that of African apes, that is the gorillas and the chimps, is what? Controversial. Times of as much as 20 million and as little as 4.5 million years ago are suggested." Look at the variation there. 20 million years and 4.5 million years. That's incredibly wide variation there. They can't get any more specific than that. And so these are some of the many problems, and it's listed in this Dictionary of Zoology. Human evolution? I don't think so. Hickman and his fellow authors, 5 of them total, 3 years ago, said in their zoology text, 18th edition, and I quote, "We note that, like that of other hominins, that is, individuals, the humans, the apes, and the chimpanzees, and the gorillas, the evolution of Homo, that is, Homo sapiens." Homo is the genus name, Homo sapiens. The evolution of Homo is highly controversial. Not just controversial as of 2020, it's highly controversial. Again, what a breath of fresh air if students could see this in American public schools. And I appreciate that Hickman and his 4 other authors put this in a university zoology textbook. So let's put it in high school textbooks. Human evolution is messier than we thought. That's a good scientific word, messier. Quote, the human family tree has been shaken up at least 4 times in 2019 alone, a fact that indicates how fragile and problematic the evidence for human evolution is. 4 times in just 2019. Nature magazine, 2019, Colin Barajas said, ancient cranium discovered in Ethiopia, in Africa, suggests early hominin evolutionary tree is messier than we thought. Messier than we thought. Are you getting the idea, ladies and gentlemen, that human evolution is not all it's cracked up to be? Now, I could give you the so-called missing links, but we would be here for a long time and it gets awfully boring. And I like to cut to the chase and just see what evolutionists are saying, generally speaking, about so-called human evolution. It's not pretty. Complicated, messy, and random. The human saga, said Kate Wong, who is an evolutionist, we now understand is far more intricate than scholars of yore envisioned. The tidy troops of prehistory have collapsed under the weight of evidence. I love that. Collapsed under the weight of evidence. Well, it's either going to support evolution or it's not. And there is no single missing link that bridges apes and humankind. At the risk of being redundant, can I repeat that? At the risk of being redundant, can I repeat that? There is no single missing link that bridges apes and humankind. Who has been saying that for many, many, many years? Non-evolutionists. Non-evolutionists, creationists have been saying that. And I'll say it today in the year 2023. There is no single missing link that bridges apes and humankind. No drumbeat that marches of progress toward a predestined goal. Our story is complicated, messy, and random. By our story, she means evolution. That's not true with creation. We've been created in God's image thousands of years ago. A key piece of the human family tree is still, what's the word there, class? Missing, waiting to be found, according to Sharping, an evolutionist writing in 2020. Humans' most recent ancestor, the species that predated our kind, remains shrouded in mystery. Anthropologists still don't know what species humans evolved from just 3 short years ago. Sometimes people, good-natured, I mean, they're sincere. They say to me, Frank, if we evolved from apes, why do we still have apes? Have you heard that before? Okay, evolutionists are not saying that. They're saying that you've got the apes and the chimpanzees and the gorillas and all that, and you have people. But as you go back in deep evolutionary time, then these lines of evidence you see here come together to a common ancestor millions of years ago. And this common ancestor millions of years ago split, who knows where, they only know it's millions of years ago, to form the chimpanzees and apes and gorillas and all that, and people. So that now you have them separated here in the 21st century and in more recent times. So that's what evolution is saying. What's the big problem with that? Well, we like to say the missing links are missing. The missing links are missing. Who is this common ancestor that links all the chimpanzees and apes and gorillas with people? Who is that common ancestor? Nobody knows. Can creationists make scientific predictions? Can creationists make scientific predictions? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. We love science. I embrace science. I love invertebrate zoology. So we love science, and yes, we can make predictions. Can I make a prediction this morning? I know I'm being recorded. Oh my. Okay, I'm going to make a prediction anyway. Here's a prediction. I predict, on the basis of the creation science model, they will never find, you see there at the very bottom of the diagram, they will never find that so-called missing link that would link the creatures that I just mentioned in mankind. They can keep looking and keep looking, they will never find it. That's my prediction. So how are we going to prove it one way or another? Keep digging in the rocks, the sedimentary rocks, and look for this ethereal missing link that definitively show that we came from ape-like ancestors. Again, we would predict on the basis of the biblical creation model that missing link ancestor will never be found. And so you know where to look for me. Just go to icr.org, say, Frank, they found the missing link. I would love to see that. I'll make a public apology, as well as my other colleagues and all. Most hotly debated topic. Look at there. Origin of species, 1859. The origin of the hominines, that is, African apes and people, is among the most hotly debated topics in paleoanthropology. That statement was made way back last month. Just last month, in August. Science News, the news staff said that, August 24th of this year. Can you get any more recent than that? I don't think so. And so I'm bringing you the most recent quotes that I could possibly show and share with you, showing that evolutionary naturalists, and I'm not making fun of them, not pointing fingers, we don't do that at ICR. I'm simply sharing with God's people, that's the status. This is the situation here. And so I see some of you are writing that quote down. Please do. Please do. Because it's just last month. Boy, you can get a lot of mileage out of this. You know, this is not from the 1970s. 1982, they said. No, this is last month. And so people can like to talk about the origin of species, but the only place that we can go to see the true origin of species is written by one who was there when? In the beginning. In the beginning. So what is the key tool used in human evolution studies? And I'm being quite serious about this. I'm not poking fun or chuckling or anything like that. What is the key tool used in human evolution studies? The answer is imagination. Imagination. Frank, I think you're making fun. Nope. Nope. Here it is. Young Charles Darwin is being told a story by his nanny by candlelight there in the early 1800s. The princess kissed the frog and it changed into a handsome prince, and young Charles Darwin said, boy, when I grow up, I'm going to write stuff like that. Frank, you just got through saying you weren't going to make fun. I'm not. I'm not. Here is a quote by an evolutionist who said, "One's imagination must fill up the very wide blanks." One's imagination must fill up the very wide blanks. I wonder who said that. Well, Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin said that in a letter to Asa Gray just in September of 1857. And so you can appeal to imagination, that's fine. Nobody says you can't do that, but don't call it science. Don't call it science. Say it for what it is. It's imagination. Boy, as a creationist, I have a pretty fertile imagination, but I don't appeal to imagination to make the case for creation. I appeal to God's infallible, inerrant word and go from there. Here it is, Peter Dodson, D-O-D-S-O-N, and I went to the Perot Museum. We've been members of the Perot Museum, even though they're overtly evolution in their worldview. I get all sorts of ammunition from the Perot Museum in Dallas. Peter Dodson said, and I quote, "I have to tell you that imagination is a what class? Very, very important trait for those who study fossils, paleontologists." That's somebody who studies fossils. He says it's a very, very important trait. Thank you, Peter Dodson. Thank you. We're not making fun of him and just saying thanks for being honest and appealing, as he does, to imagination. Imagination is not science. And he's a nice guy, you know, but this ain't science. Imagination, according to Webster's New World Dictionary, is the act or power of forming a mental image of what is not present. You gotta love it. You gotta love it. Okay. Evolutionists disagree, of course, insisting there are clear evidences that people came from lower life forms. And so let's go ahead and look at those very quickly when we talk about urban legends of human evolution. And you've heard of urban legends, right? Like LGMs. What are LGMs? Little green men. UFOs and all that, and giant alligators in the sewers of like New York. People would flush their baby alligators because they got tired of them, and they mutated and grew into these huge. Those are urban legends. So let's look at anatomy in terms of our first urban legend, and that is back problems. Who here has been told the reason why we have such serious back problems, and billions of people have back problems, is because evolution. We only recently learned to walk upright from all fours. Anybody? That's being taught. A lot of chiropractors, New Age chiropractors, I'm not making fun of them, the New Age chiropractors say, yeah, I'm doing a booming business because man only recently, evolutionarily speaking, has learned to walk upright, and so we have inherited a lot of back problems. It sounds kind of convincing, but they're wrong. They're wrong. That's an urban legend. In terms of evolution of bipedalism, bi means two, two legs. In other words, walking on two legs. And so this is the idea they have, that we came up from the tetrapods. Tetra means four-footed beasts up into walking on two legs. Oh, he can walk upright. He just hasn't had his coffee yet. We need to add a little bit of humor, can't we, this morning? Shake your head like this. Okay. The first recorded upright walking human, ta-da! That was one of my funny favorite ones there. Is the evolution of bipedalism, that is upright walking, the cause of our back problems? That's the question to ask this morning. Is it because we have such serious back problems because of how we evolved, came up from all fours? Exactly, Richard Gray said this in BBC a couple of years ago. Why and when our ancestors stood upright and started moving around on 2 feet is still shrouded in what? Mystery. Richmond and fellow authors said in the American Journal of Physical Anthropology in the 21st century, quote, some of the most long-standing questions in paleoanthropology concern how and why human bipedalism evolved. And they didn't know back then. They still don't know today. Up to 90% of all Americans suffer at least from one debilitating episode of back pain during their lives. Just a few years ago in New Scientist magazine. Back pain is one of the leading causes of disability around the world. In the United States alone it cost, I had to check this number because I couldn't believe it, $635 billion with a B, $billion per year in medical bills and loss of productivity. Okay, and that was said in 2018. And so, yeah, people suffer from all sorts of debilitating back pain and issues with the back. Why our bags are wrecking our backs. Okay, that's the actual title of an article about back problems. NBC News said recently, heavy backpacks or bags can lead to back problems and poor posture. Newport, out in the East Coast, Orthopedic Institute said, and I quote, I still couldn't believe this, but it's true, about 5,000 children visit emergency rooms each year because of backpack-related injury. You do see these kids walking around with these massive backpacks, and you have to feel for them because, and this leads to back problems. Does this have anything to do with evolution? No, this has nothing to do with Darwinian evolution. This has to do with bad posture. This has to do with putting strain on your back when you're young, and it follows you into adulthood. This has nothing to do with Darwinian evolution. So what's the cause of back problems? Well, evolution's a no-show. What causes our back problems is a lack of exercise, too much sitting, obesity, bad habits, and injury. And people get in a car accident, and it has all sorts of trauma to their back. That's got nothing to do with evolution. People have bad posture. Just all sorts of explanations that are evolution-free. And so, have you ever seen these before? This is called the Varidesk. And this helps with people to avoid getting back problems and maybe giving some relief to back problems they have. The reason I show that is that's a really, really good piece of orthopedic furniture to have. There's a number of people in ICR now that have these Varidesks, which are in Coppell, Texas, which is a stone's throw from ICR. And it was thought up by an individual in Coppell. And it is very, very effective. So ABC stands for what? Anything but creation. Anything but Christianity. ABC. 2019. I can never say this with a straight face. Exploding stars may trigger ecological changes on Earth, which might, in turn, have led humans to embrace the two-legged lifestyle. So why did we come up from four-legged tetrapod ancestry? Because a star exploded billions of years ago out there. Is that scientific? I mean, I'm not trying to make this up. This is what they're saying. And I think it's amusing. University of Kansas 2019, initiating an avalanche of electrons in the lower atmosphere and setting off a chain of events that feasibly ended, that's a key word, feasibly, ended with bipedal hominins. Okay, it's due to exploding star giving us a wash of electrons in the lower atmosphere. Folks, that's kind of a stretch. Of course, there's no evidence for it because that only happened, billions of years ago, the exploding stars and all that would somehow affect Earth. Well, Dr. Gary Parker talks about human evolution. He does an outstanding job there. And so this is Gary's book. We still have more. Buy 2 or 3 of these and then give them to your friends or relatives that have young people who are in senior high or going to college or university. This is the book to have. Also, we have on display there Human Origins. I've written 2 or 3 articles for this on human evolution, specifically Australopithecus afarensis. Too late in the morning to be talking like that, but anyway, Australopithecus afarensis is Lucy. You've heard of Lucy, right? And so I have a pretty long article about Lucy in this booklet. So maybe during Q&A, if you have questions, just go ahead and get this book on human evolution. And this goes together like hand and glove with this Gary Parker's book. So he mentions human evolution here. This booklet here goes into more detail, and that's what students need. And then for the more serious individual who really wants to know what creation science talks about, well, this is the book. This is the second edition of Creation Basics and Beyond. There's absolutely no illustrations here. This is just solid articles, and I've written several articles too in regard to human evolution. So avail yourself to this book as well. All right, so how about vestigial organs? We got to move on because we're running out of time. As recently as 1971, I was in the Navy that time on an aircraft carrier, the Encyclopedia Britannica claimed that there were more than 100 vestigial organs in man. You know what vestigial organs are, right? As for example, your tonsils and your appendix and sort of things like that are supposedly vestigial, that are still in our body, but they don't have any kind of function. Well, that list has shrunk to zero. Scientific American 2016 said, and of course, humans are replete with useless vestigial structures. That's quite a statement to make, especially in light of what we know about human anatomy and physiology. A distinctive sign of our evolutionary ancestry, such as wisdom teeth. Oh boy. I really appreciate they mentioned wisdom teeth, because wisdom teeth definitely have nothing at all to do with human evolution. Well, Frank, look at the impacted wisdom teeth there. I mean, that's in dentists, take out wisdom teeth all the time. Yeah, but they don't have to. They don't have to. As a matter of fact, I made sure that with my children that they would get x-rays to make sure that the teeth are coming in normally and weren't crowded. And that you have to really use a case-by-case basis and not just willy-nilly take out the wisdom teeth because you think they might be a vestige. There's a whole lot more to it than that. Wisdom tooth removal has nothing to do with evolution and everything to do with what? Diet. Processed and refined foods in modern societies, like we eat Jell-O and whipped cream. Oh, but that really stimulates chewing, doesn't it? Big Macs. Yeah. These are the processed and refined foods in modern society have resulted in our reduced use of wisdom teeth. Guess who uses their wisdom teeth all the time? Third world countries. People who have a high fiber diet, and they chew hard. They call it mastication, this chewing and all that. Their wisdom teeth are used all the time to crunch on these high husk fiber type of vegetables and so forth. A researcher concluded that most prophylactic third molar extractions are medically unnecessary, and the proper course is to clinically and radiographically monitor the teeth to determine pathological changes that indicates clear need for extraction. Okay, so in what I say, it's a case-by-case basis. Don't take out the wisdom teeth just because they're wisdom teeth, and that's what a lot of dentists do, and I'm not challenging them and all, but you should take it case by case. Well, what about tooth origin? Peter Ungar said in 2010, the details of when, where, why, and how teeth first appeared still elude consensus. Teeth have always been what? Teeth, yeah. See how profound that is? Teeth have always been teeth. When you go to the fossil record, what do you find? You find proto-teeth? No, you find 100% teeth, in the animals alive today and in the fossil record. For example, you find a lot of shark teeth, like in Florida. Gary Parker finds a lot of shark teeth there in Florida. Teeth have always been teeth in the fossil record. As a matter of fact, sometimes that's all that's left are the teeth. And when you try and follow rodent evolution, rodents are a type of mammal, all you have to go by with sometimes are just teeth. And it's infuriating for the evolutionist. And by the way, rodents have always been rodents. Whether they're capybaras or rats or mice or rabbits. Rabbits go in and out, whether they're true rodents or not. I really don't care. The fact is that rodents have always been rodents. I have a book published in 2015 with various articles about so-called rodent evolution, and the editors, two editors, said in the introduction to this book, Evolution of Rodents, 2015, they said, if you look at the fossil record, it's tempting to say rodents have always been rodents. That's what these two evolutionists said. Boy, have I gotten mileage out of that quote, because that's exactly it. rodents have always been rodents. Rodent evolution is as bad as saying human evolution, because there is no evolution at all. So, in the fossil record, the book on the back there, I have a section on human evolution. I really enjoyed writing that section along with the late John Morris. When I joined ICR back in 1996, he and I would go out and speak, and then we finally ended up writing a book on the fossil record. And I love the fossil record. I think it's really a classic indication for creation. And do you remember those plastic platters that people used to spin and put a needle on it? Does that sound familiar? They call them, what do they call them, records? Right, yeah, records. I used to work at a radio station in Gunnison, Colorado, playing all the hits all the time. But I would play, we had 2 turntables, these records. And people would call me up and ask me to say, Frank, would you play the fossil record? I said, no, we don't play rock music. Another time-release joke. What can I say? Okay, so it's been revised and updated. How about this, a tailbone? Have you ever walked along and slipped on the ice out here and fell on your tailbone? Maybe you cracked it or something. I see people nodding in painful agreement and all that. And so is the tailbone useless? Shake your head like this. First of all, we would say that the human spinal column has to end somewhere, right? It's got to end somewhere, and we call it the 4 fused bones at the base of the spine, the coccyx. And the coccyx are fused there, okay? Now, if you know anything about human anatomy or the anatomy of any vertebrate, including people, then what you find is the skeleton is designed to keep us in an upright posture. It's designed to attach muscles, right? And so there are muscles that attach to the coccyx, very important muscles. The vertebral column is a linear row of bones that supports the head at its beginning and must end somewhere. Wherever it ends, evolutionists will be sure to call it a vestigial tail. But that's bad science. That simply doesn't work there. Creation offer a friendly challenge to the evolutionists. Here's my friendly challenge to the evolutionary community. I've actually done this in debates with evolutionists. I say, if you think that our 4 fused bones at the base of our spinal column are useless evolutionary vestiges, then I would like you to pool your money as an evolutionary community. It's easy to do. And have a volunteer go into surgery and get the coccyx removed. After all, it's a what? It's a vestige. You don't need it. And so get a volunteer, short straw, and they can go in and get their coccyx removed. And guess what? If they can't pay for it, and I've said this a dozen times or more, I said ICR will pay for it. If you can't do it, we'll go ahead and pay for the surgery. And I'm serious. We'll pay for the surgery. But there's one thing we won't pay for, and that's for whoever does get the surgery to show that the coccyx is useless. We won't pay for the diapers that individual will need for the rest of their lives. I'm quite serious. Because remember I said how muscles attach to the coccyx? Those muscles are for I don't want to get into too much detail, especially before lunch, but it's for what we call the defecation reflex. And I used to teach about it when I taught anatomy and physiology. But if you remove the muscles, or the attachment of those muscles for the defecation reflex, you're going to need diapers the rest of your life. All of a sudden now they understand that the coccyx is not some kind of useless vestige at all, but it has a function, does it not? Point made. I think it's a point made. Human saliva versus chimp saliva. I just mentioned lunch. But are they the same? Did we come from a chimpanzee? Is that our closest evolutionary relative? Well, instead of me answering the question, I'll let the evolutionists answer the question. Human saliva and chimp saliva should be virtually identical. Virtually identical. But here it is. We find the protein concentration in milligrams per milliliter there in the side, and then humans, chimpanzees, gorillas, and macaques. And we can see that the salivary proteome, that is the proteins found in the saliva, human saliva is about 99% water, and we can see the humans are down there in the lower left-hand corner. Well, look where the chimpanzees are, our supposed closest evolutionary relative. Very, very different from humans. They're quite different, and gorillas even more so, and the macaque somewhere in between. So this individual, his name is in Molecular Biology and Evolution, said in 2019, we found that humans produce a waterier saliva containing less than a half total protein than great apes and old world monkeys. And so we find that humans are unique even when it comes to our saliva. Human saliva is about, I'm sorry, I lied, it's 99.5% water. And so this same author, evolutionist, 100% evolutionist, said in 2019, quote, we discovered unique protein profiles in saliva of humans that were distinct from those of non-human primates, end quote. So people are unique and fully formed from the very beginning, and anatomically they have lots and lots of unique characteristics as well. This is This is what I studied when I took histology in graduate school and as an undergraduate. Is our appendix and our tonsils, are they useless? We've heard a lot about that. Well, this is way back in 2009, but still it's 21st century. If Darwin had been aware of the species that have an appendix attached to a large cecum, and if he had known about the widespread nature of the appendix, he probably would not have thought of the appendix as a vestige of evolution. And I agree. Our appendix is very important. When I was in graduate school at the University of Northern Colorado, I told my professor I'd like to do a paper on the ultrastructure of the appendix. Ultrastructure means electron microscopy pictures of the appendix. He was an evolutionist. When I asked, could I do it on the appendix, you know what he said? No. He said, don't waste your time. The appendix is a useless evolutionary vestige, a leftover. That's what he said. And so I said, okay. And so I did it on astrocytes, which are sustentacular cells in the brain. But the point is that they maintain that the appendix is a useless vestige. Don't waste your time. However, Saladin said in 2001, the appendix is densely populated with lymphocytes and is a significant source of immune cells. Wow, what are lymphocytes? Well, you've heard of lymph cells and lymphatic tissue, and these white blood cells are programmed by lymphatic tissue, such as what we find in the appendix and the tonsils. And they're actually programmed before they enter into the circulation. Most of those lymphocytes are destroyed by our immune system because they're not quite the way they're supposed to be designed. That's another evidence for creation. I don't want to get into that right now, but this is a cross-section of the appendix, and the purple staining that you see there indicates dense amounts of lymphatic tissue. And so you can live without your appendix, though. That's what evolutionists say. Yeah, but you can live without your appendix. I say, yeah, there are people here probably right now that don't have an appendix. But we would say you do better if you had your appendix. That's what we're saying. Just because you can live without it doesn't mean it's useless. Can you live without your arms? There's some hesitation. Yes. Yeah, you can live without your arms, right? You can live without your legs, but they're important, aren't they? You bet. And so that's the point. So we want to make sure that we understand that. Evolution of the appendix is a biological remnant no more, according to an article in Prehistoric, which is an internet evolutionary. Duke scientists and collaborators from the University of Arizona and Arizona State University, both hotbeds of evolutionary naturalism and atheism, conclude that Darwin was wrong. Boy, that's an amazing statement to make, especially with the University of Arizona. The appendix is a whole lot more than an evolutionary remnant. End quote. There we go. We've been saying this for years. Now the evolutionists, as of 2009, are saying, yeah, okay, it's a whole lot more than evolutionary remnant. We're going, yeah, that's what we've been saying. So there's the appendix. And then again, Saladin, as I mentioned, the appendix is densely populated with lymphocytes. By the way, keep your tonsils. Tell that to your grandkids or your great-grandkids. It wasn't long ago when tonsils were routinely removed, just like your molars, your wisdom teeth. partly from the belief that they were useless vestiges of an evolutionary past, what creationists now call evolutionary medical malpractice. That's what we call it. Fortunately, I've never got my tonsils taken out, and I'm a child of the 50s when all of my friends were getting their tonsils removed because medical schools were teaching the up-and-coming doctors that the tonsils were a useless vestige and just take them out when the kids are young. They were removing the first line of defense when you inhale pathogens, disease-causing microorganisms like bacteria and viruses. And so when you remove that, you're exposing the body to pathogens that usually would not get into because of what the tonsils were there for. And so you do better if you had lymphatic tissue like the tonsils. So it was a medical error. And then we're out of time. One example, the 98.4% argument, that's what they say, that chimpanzees and people have 98.4% the same DNA. Have you heard that before? Mark it down, ladies and gentlemen. That is an urban legend. That is that is simply incorrect. People and chimpanzees have the same DNA, 98.4%. Well, first of all, we would say that genomes are not recipes. The whole genome, the entire genetic complement of an individual, are not recipes. A creature that shares 98.4% of DNA with humans is not 98.4 human any more than a fish that shares, say, 40% is 40% human. That's right. There are fish in the ocean that have 40% the same DNA as people do. Would you point to that fish and say, that fish is 40% human? Of course not. It has to digest things like fat and proteins and carbohydrates, right? We digest things like fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. Therefore, the creators used the same enzymes that break down those fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. That doesn't mean one came from the other. In other words, a common ancestor. It means a common designer. A common designer, not a common ancestor. And so genomes are not recipes. And by the way, physically, you can tell the difference between a person and a chimpanzee, can't you? I mean, it's not like, boy, they're so alike genetically speaking, it's hard to tell the difference. No, very, very different. And one evolutionist said way back in 2000, we share half our genes with the banana. Okay, and that was Robert May, the chief UK scientist. Sometimes evolutionists get upset when I show this slide because they say that's not what we're saying. And yes, that's exactly what they're saying. That we have half of our genes of the banana. And also the carrot. Carrots have about half the same genes as a human. But there's something else going on. And one is not, it doesn't mean we're 50% banana, 50% carrot, or vice versa. Chapter 13 of the Genetic Evidence, we do not have this book here today, but you can get it at icr.org, the bookstore, icr.org. Read about the 4 profound genetic problems with ape-to-man evolution. I wish I had time. I don't, but there are 4 very, very compelling genetic problems with this idea that ape-to-man evolution occurred. I'll end with this because we're out of time here. But this was said back in 2007. They might as well have said it yesterday. They might as well have said it yesterday. Look at this. For about 23% of our genome, that is our entire genetic makeup, we share no immediate genetic ancestries with our closest living relative, the chimpanzee. So Erbesberger said, as long as with the others in molecular biology and evolution, they said, yes, the chimpanzee is our closest living relative. But we, for 23% of our genome, we don't share that. 23%, that's a lot. That's hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of proteins which are totally unique in people that you don't find in chimpanzees, our alleged closest evolutionary relative. It's time for lunch. Pastor,